Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to another FileCloud webinar. Today we're going to be discussing some ways you can access your data on your cloud a little bit faster. So some of the topics we're going to be talking today are using server sync for a hybrid setup. We're going to be discussing how's hybrid setup, how does this look like, how's interaction and what tools are needed. Pretty much accessing your files on LAN and syncing the changes to FileCloud with our server sync tool and the benefits of a hybrid setup. As well, we're going to be discussing using server link to replicate your data and consolidating your data from branch offices and accessing changes. So before we begin, I want to take a minute so we can look at a couple of system diagrams for using server sync on a hybrid setup. So at a high level, this is how this would look like. Pretty much your users will have access to the network shares on their local machines. They can apply changes while being within the office to that LAN file server. They will access the files normally as they would on Windows local network share, and as soon as the changes are done, changes will get synced to FileCloud Online or to your FileCloud server if you're doing it on premise. Afterwards, if they go home or they're on the road, they can easily access that data on their computer, on their phone, or any other device that supports FileCloud. Whatever changes they make on their phone or on their device will sync back to FileCloud Online, which will sync back to the file server. That way, when they go back into the office, they will still have the changes that they made while being on the road. Some of the benefits you get is a better file collaboration, audit log capabilities in terms of who accessed what and where, data recovery if they delete any of these files. It has faster upload and download speed, storage encryption, data consolidation. You get retention policies, Active Directory integration. You can modernize your infrastructure as well. It's a VPN-less access, integrate with Office 365, and other benefits it has. Now, I'm going to be moving my screen away to our setup so we can review how does this really look like. So this would be our FileCloud Server Sync tool. So what our Server Sync tool does is that it grants you a benefit that it can connect to your file server network storage. This can either be your files, such as located on local disk C, or any local disk where you're keeping your HR, your development, your marketing, your support. You're pretty much every network share that your users have access to, right? So when a user modifies a file directly from their network share, Server Sync will immediately apply those changes. Let's do a quick test here, right? Let's say I'm a user, right? And I open one of my documents, I say, and I save it. Oops. File save. It's in the local disk C. Okay, fine. I'm gonna go ahead and save this document. Just let me make sure that it's not read only. I think I saw a message there. Okay. It's saved already. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's why. Local disk C usually requires special permissions, but that's fine. Optimally, you're going to have this network shares either located on a different drive than I have, temporary storage space, or local disk C, or whatever you want it. Immediately, you can see the changes that I made were synced immediately by our server sync tool and up to the cloud. Now, if we were to go ahead and access our FileCloud cloud, I'm going to log in as if I were a normal user. My user got deleted. There we go. That's my user. I immediately am going to see that I have network shares here. Perfect. I can see my document. So if I go into the cloud, I want to preview this document, see what I've changed. I'm going to be able to see everything that I have done into this document without any issue. Now, if I were to add a new document per se and say, I want to add a new folder and call this I immediately create a new folder and just give me capabilities. For example, do there we go. So I'm just applying a couple of changes on the cloud side. So you can see how these changes will be replicated by a server sync tool on local. It takes anywhere from 30 to 120 seconds to 30 seconds to sync, depending on how you have your configuration set. Once you apply certain changes on FileCloud, they immediately get replicated on your cloud. Give you an idea, if we go back here, oops, not here. Oh, that was my network share. I can already see that information in here is exactly the same as I have it on my cloud. Now, when we're talking about syncing files within FileCloud, you're most likely going to be referring this to a team folder. We go back into the admin portal. Let's look at the name of that folder. Webinar. Okay. All right. Perfect. So you know what? Let us go ahead and show you how this will work from scratch. So in regards to how to set it up, I'm going to be creating it from scratch so we can actually see how does it work completely. I'm going to call this network. So I'm creating a folder as part of our team folders, which is our managed storage infrastructure, right? Pretty much this data will get uploaded into FileCloud. I'm going to give it upload right, share right, it can sync right, so that it is able to bidirectionally sync. And then once that is done, I'm going to go into my server folders. And I'm going to go ahead and add network from LAN, which is the folder we just created, right, which is my remote folder. And then for my local folder, I'm going to select, you know what? Let's select this folder, core network shares. And let's select two-way sync. Why two-way sync? Because if we go back to our diagram, remember that whatever I change on local, it should change on the cloud, and whatever I change on the cloud, it should change on local. Perfect. So as soon as I add that folder, there's going to be an initial sync that's done to push those files up into the cloud. If you remember, this folder is completely new and it should be empty. But right now that we're pushing the changes, the file should be there. The amount of time it takes to sync, it depends on your network settings as well for your how big the files are and your bandwidth speed pretty much. So right now, see I have a couple of users, I have a couple of files, folders that file did. So what I'm going to proceed on doing now is showing you how will that look. We're going to team folders. I see network shares from LAN. Let's keep in mind that this is on FileCloud, right? However, this is on my local. Users will access this data as a local network share on their computers. They make changes and the changes appear here. To give you a better idea about this, let's look at this file. Perfect. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and check. Perfect. And yes. Oh, look at this C. Okay, that's fine. Put this on the desktop. And then replace it here. So since my user does not really have the corresponding permissions to modify the local disk C, you're going to see this. However, most network shares are not located on the local disk C, and if so, you can modify your permissions accordingly. That should not be an issue whatsoever. Now that I apply that change, you see here that says Jack test doc completed the upload. I'm going to do a quick refresh on this side. So that's the change that I made from local and it's now on the cloud. Now when you have Office 365, you're able to make changes to this client and be able to view them. Let me see if we can access FileCloud Drive. So FileCloud Drive is one of our desktop clients that will grant you access to your files and folders directly from FileCloud. So instead of your users using a VPN, this is how they could access their files. I'm going to log in with my webinar user. So that I can access my files from FileCloud directly. You see? So say user is home, if he wants to edit this file, that's fine. He can open up this file and edit it. He can make any changes he wants from his home. Like hello world, this is a test. And save it. Automatically you're gonna see it saves back to FileCloud. Once we do this, you can close it up. You're going to be able to see here that it says, that says uploading. As soon as it's completed uploading, you're going to get a positive message saying, hey, your file has completed uploading. As well, FileCloud Server Sync will proceed on downloading that file. You saw that, right? So we made the changes on the FileCloud side, but Server Sync detected the changes and edited them. So if we go now and we wanted to check our local, which is this one, this is a test. That's perfect. You had hello world, and now we added this as a test, which means it is working exactly as we expected. So let's go back to our diagram here just for a minute so we can review what we have done. And if we see here our diagram, you're going to notice this is exactly the functionality that we just did. So we have our file server, which is a folder with network shares, right? And our users are accessing those network shares on local LAN. Whatever changes they make on local LAN get picked up by a server sync agent, which is this guy right here, right? And then they get synced up to our FileCloud, which will be this one right here. As well, if a user leaves the office, right, and travels wherever he wants, he can access FileCloud from any desktop client that we have, or even the web browser. That will be this guy right here. Any changes that you make on either or get replicated across the board, which means whatever's on your local environment, you should be having the same information on FileCloud. And that way you can actually access your data faster. Now let us review how is this faster. When your users are in the office, there is really no need of using a FileCloud desktop client. Reason is because local LAN is always going to be faster than HTTP or HTTPS, right? So instead of having to go through an external protocol and connecting outside your LAN, your users can just easily access your local LAN to access your data. In such a way, this will be faster on your infrastructure because it's consuming less bandwidth speed, and they have it locally, which just guarantees them direct access to their data. Please, if you have any questions at this point, do feel free to post them on the chat. We're going to be responding them as well at the end of this webinar. Nevertheless, do feel free to just post them as we go. So just to summarize a little bit, FileCloud Server Sync will sync all the files and folders from FileCloud into each local server, right, in case you have a branch office. System administrator will convert the downloaded files into network shares to grant their users access to a network LAN, to our local LAN, which is exactly what we did, right? We have our FileCloud installation, we have our LAN folders, we make changes to the LAN, server syncing up to the local, and then if we make a change from FileCloud Online, that syncs it down to the local as well. Now, let us review our second topic, which is replication. When we're talking about replication, it is pretty common that we have the following issue. Let's say you have branch office 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but you have the root office or the headquarters, right? Sometimes this branch offices have to connect through a DFS kind of file system to access your data from one branch office to the headquarters, which produces a slow download speed. You have the issue in which some of the files are not yet available because they're just taking way too much time to download. Instead of having to suffer this pain of having to connect to the headquarters, with FileCloud, you can easily replicate your data. FileCloud has a tool or a client, better yet said, that runs within the server called ServerLink. ServerLink has the capability to replicate from one master or from the headquarters to all of the branch offices. Let's see how this works actually in real life. let's say I have a file here. Well, I'm just gonna go ahead and create a new folder. Let's create that. And inside here, I'm gonna add a couple of documents, right? I'm gonna add, let's see what we have here. You know what? Let's do. Now at this point, I've added that file already. And if I go into settings, server link, and I go into my other server link, look at the number right here, right? That's telling me the amount of records that I have. So as you can see, it's different, right? The one in the master, which is our main headquarters, is different from the one in the branch office. Now it is exactly the same, which means that if I go into a team folder, I see server link replication here, which is perfect. If I go here, I can see it also replicated, and so on and so forth. Now, what is the benefit of having this, right? Well, pretty much the great benefit that you have is that you have the files already there. You don't have to be waiting for any file per se to reach here. For example, in this scenario, I've just uploaded another document here, and if I go in here, that document won't be there yet, right? But you do see it here. However, our replication engine is pretty fast. It usually takes no more than a couple of seconds for small files. We're even able to replicate a couple of gigs files in less than 4 or 5 minutes, depending on your speed. Now, file replication for FileCloud can only be done from our managed storage capabilities, which means it's going to replicate users, team folders, your basic configurations that you have. That is the intended behavior. This one, you see the file has been already replicated. So if we go back to our initial statement, think about it this way. Let's say you have a branch office in Miami, another one in Texas, then you have another branch office in Atlanta, right? And all of these ones are trying to pull shares from California. It would just take too much time for those shares, for those files to be accessed from such long distances. FileCloud Server Link provides you a faster way to access your files by simply replicating your data across the board. Any changes you make on the one side replicates on the other, and so on and so forth, which means you all are going to have the most up-to-date information as soon as your application is completed. As you saw, I was able to copy a couple of files just for this testing scenario in which I went ahead and just replicated 2 files. I did it from one server and then from that one server to the other. And the files appear on both locations. That's how you access your files a little bit faster. Now, if you had to combine our server sync technology and file replication, there's also a way to do it easily. So based on this setup that we've seen, you already know how server sync is working. Basically, server sync is able to make changes from a FileCloud, um, from a local network share and push it into FileCloud, right? That's pretty much what it is. Server sync is able to pick up the changes that you make on your local LAN files, right? And push those files into the FileCloud server. Now, using servers link enabled, you have the capability of not only pushing those files, but replicating them as well, which means that as soon as a file is uploaded to FileCloud, FileCloud will then grab this file and push it and send it across the board. That way you have a seamless integration of FileCloud and you're able to access your data faster. Let me actually give you a real life demonstration of how will that look like. I'm going to access some of our virtual infrastructure setup that we have. That would allow you to see how this would work. Okay. Just give me a minute. I gotta change my screen. Okay, this should be good enough. Let me share it with you guys. Okay, my screen should be coming up shortly. Okay, so now if we go here, so what I'm doing right now is that I'm granting my user Jack access to the server link file folder. And then I'm going to go into my other environment, which we were working earlier, and I am going to log in with this user. So those are two separate environments, right? We're just mixing the technologies together to see how they function. Okay, I like this one. So in here we have a couple of files, right? We have about 11 items that I'm going to be syncing. And we're going to see how that replicates. So if I had to select, I'm going to select my server link replication folder. And I'm going to select my local folder, which is on my desktop. This time we should not be having any difficulties with permissions. And I'm going to sync that up. Perfect. So what it does at the beginning, right, it first downloads the files that it had on the cloud. As you can see them here. And now starts uploading them. Now they have uploaded them. If I go into server link replication, I see my files there. Now, what's really going on in the background is that these files are being replicated across the board. 901. So if we go in here, awesome. It's a pretty fast replication, as you can see. See this guy right here, so you can see the number is still coming up, which means it's still replicating and it's done. So if I go into the team folder, server link, I am able to already see my files there in all sites. So instead of accessing all on one location, the branch offices can have the same data on their own location. Now, how cool is this? Well, pretty much let's say now your users are going to be accessing your data on their local file server. They can just do something like, hello world, we are testing. When they save the files up into FileCloud, immediately whatever the changes that they did will get replicated across the board, which gives us a great capability of having all of these files at the same time on all locations. So seamlessly your users will just go ahead and change files, right, without any issue from any location, and the data will replicate across the board, either using server sync just to do a hybrid setup or using server link to replicate the data physically. So just to summarize it up a little bit for you guys, because I want to avoid any confusion here. When we're talking about FileCloud server sync, we are referring to our desktop client, which grants you the capability of being able to sync your files from your local LAN to FileCloud. And then from FileCloud, replicate the changes down into that specific server where server sync is. Now, server link, though, grants you the capability of replicating the files across different FileCloud servers. So let us recall that for a second there, right? Server link will grant you the capability of replicating different FileCloud servers. I know that, right? And then once those changes are done, you can also use together FileCloud server link and server sync to replicate the changes down. At this point, we're going to be leaving about a couple of minutes for questions. If there are any, please feel free to ask them. Okay, at this point, I see there are no questions coming in. So, a quick startup guide will be sent to everybody that attended this meeting. If you need help, feel free to contact our support team at support@colace.com. Our team are amazing. Our support team are really the best out there. Just send them an email at support@colace.com, or if you have any similar use case from the ones you've seen right now, feel free to contact our sales department at sales@colace.com, and we'll gladly go into a call with you to explain you in detail what can be done to accomplish our replication or grant you faster access to your files. If you would like to visit our documentation, it's completely publicly open. Just go to www.getfilecloud.com/support docs to gain access to our support documentation and read a little bit more about this. As I said, all of this information is completely publicly accessed. You can just go to our support docs. They look similar to this. And you're going to have full guides to installation configuration, how does it function, and if you want to search, you can just type stuff like server sync in this case, right? It's one of the topics that we reviewed, and you can look for information on server sync, like FileCloud server sync or server sync frequently asked questions. And you get a full environment and how does it work, what does it do, how to configure it, import your NTMS permissions and others. Well, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this webinar and it's been informative for you. We're happy to help you, and anything that comes up, please do let us know. You have a great week. Goodbye.